What is the most crucial first step, and what significant internal resistance should they prepare for?
Yeah, I mean, this is the question I get most often from clients, or if I give talks around the world about AI, and folks pull me aside and they're like, where do I begin? Right? So I think the broad answer, and again, this is actually outlined in a lot of detail in the book, is do an AI census. So sit down with employees, have them account for how are they spending their time right now? Are there repetitive tasks that they seem to be doing over and over again that they think AI could offload? And then you build out, just describe all these different projects, right? You maybe come up with 10 or 20 different projects to start to chip away at those pain points.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Today we are tackling a critical topic for every real estate business: talent acquisition. And we are going beyond traditional methods to explore a fresh approach to finding and keeping the best people. I am your host, and I'm incredibly excited to introduce our guest, Housman, an expert in leveraging technology for business growth. Michael, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Michael, let's jump in. So the real estate industry often sticks to traditional hiring methods from the perspective, what are the biggest challenge or biggest flaws in traditional real estate talent acquisition? And how are these outdated methods hindering the growth in today's market?
Yeah. So, by way of background, I spent years in the trenches designing hiring assessments for hourly employees. So a lot of the work we spent was call centers and jobs of that nature. But I see a lot of the same challenges when it comes to real estate as I did when we were working with those industries. And what we saw then, and this was, by the way, a decade ago, was that, companies were putting out job descriptions and taking in applicants, and they weren't doing any sort of targeted work, right? They weren't personalizing or customizing those position descriptions. When applicants applied, it was a long series of interviews, right? It was a lot of human touch points to try to vet candidates. And, at the end of the day, hiring decisions were guided by their gut instinct and intuition. And there's a long line of research that finds that humans are actually not great decision makers, that we have tons of biases when it comes to reviewing resumes. On average, recruiters spend about 7 seconds per resume. They're looking for things like prior job experience and job hopping behavior, job history. And there's a lot of research that shows those aren't actually very correlated with outcomes on the job. Yeah, when we do interview someone, we pull them in. Statistically, we spend 5 minutes kind of forming an opinion and then 25 minutes telling ourselves why we were right. We suffer from all sorts of biases, like the like me bias. It says, if you went to the same school as me and we play the same sport, I like you, you're hired. And so, I approach this from an AI and a technologist lens, because what I believe is algorithms don't suffer from those same biases, and they can help us kind of sift through all of those applications in a really data-driven way. And so I don't see a lot of, back then it was kind of hourly workforces, but I don't see a lot of real estate hiring managers using algorithms, using AI to evaluate talent. Now, more and more, they're using it to look at resumes, right? And they're trying to screen resumes. We're getting more and more resumes that have been juiced by AI. So the response has been, hey, we're going to use AI to vet those resumes. And I think that's a good initial approach. But then when we get to the point when we're going to interview that person, I don't see companies using a lot of structured assessments. I don't see them running applicants through video assessments, tools like HireVue make available. And so we're still struggling with that kind of gut bias, that intuition from hiring managers and recruiters. And so I think, and I know from our data, that the combination of human plus machine makes better decisions than either one alone. And so what I would encourage real estate professionals and hiring managers specifically to do is explore what tools can help you throughout that hiring process, right? How can we evaluate people in a data-driven way? How can we use a variety of different tools to couple human intuition and machine logic to make better decisions? Because we all know When you hire the wrong person, and we'd studied this for years, you could have a false negative or a false positive. False negative means that you skipped someone that was a good hire. False positive means you hired someone that wasn't a good fit. False positives cost 5 times more than false negative. And so it's really bad when you hire someone that isn't the right fit, either culturally or skills wise. You end up suffering across the board. And so I think that's the key finding for me is use these tools not only to evaluate resumes, but use them throughout the hiring process. And we'll talk later about later stages of the employee life cycle, but onboarding, training someone, monitoring their engagement. There's ways to be using technology more effectively in every stage of that process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a powerful insight. So now your background suggests a strong focus on technology. So how can AI and automation, revolutionize the way real estate firms identify, qualify, and onboard new talent? I mean, offering advantages, traditional HR method cannot match.
Yeah. I mean, it's at their core, these tools scale intelligence, and that's relevant for knowledge workers. And HR is full of knowledge workers. And so I cite, I've got an upcoming book called Future Proof: Transform Your Business with AI or Get Left Behind. Two key advantages of AI. Number one is it saves us time, can allow employees to be super productive. And there's lots of research that shows that humans using AI are just better, higher quality, more throughput than humans doing it without these tools. And the second is kind of what I mentioned in the last question, which is making better decisions, right? They don't suffer from all those biases and they help humans make better decisions. So imagine, if you will, there's a hiring process and all of the touch points, you've built out an army of agents. And so it's not only writing the job description in a way that's going to resonate with applicants, but it's potentially targeting applicants. It's looking on LinkedIn or it's looking on Indeed or a different source of information, and it's inviting applicants to apply because it thinks they're a good fit and they're in the right geographic location. Now it automatically sends, let's say they do apply, it reviews that resume. It's looking for not just kind of keywords and previous experience, but it's been fine-tuned to find applicants and resumes that we know are going to do well on the job because we've trained the model to look for, you find the best performers and you say, clone me this person. And it's able to say, hey, this person is a 98% match for this job, or they're a 72% match. Now we've reviewed the resume. We want to move forward. Automated agents are reaching out to let them know that there's an online assessment. And that online assessment could be a questionnaire, right? Could be a quiz of their skills. It could be a video interview, but that first video interview is I mentioned HireVue before. They have questions, you answer it in 3 minutes, and it scores those applicants based on kind of who they think would be the best fit, and it's been trained on your existing employee population. Now they've gotten through those screens. We know they're a good applicant. They've got the skills to succeed. They look like people that have succeeded in the workforce. Maybe at that point, later in this process, you have human interviewers and recruiters who are evaluating them, and they're really able to look at culture fit. And they're able to look for a lot of the intangibles that machines can't assess necessarily from a resume or from a video screen, right? So they're almost the last step in that they're confirming, hey, this person would be a good fit. They feel like they're a match with the rest of the team. And then once you've hired, you have agents that are sending out the job offer that, then you have a human being who could walk them through it, negotiate if need be, get them to sign on the dotted line. And we won't even talk, we can talk later about onboarding, but that's a process being totally changed by AI. Imagine now you have HR professionals. Most of them right now are spending all their time, reviewing resumes and interviewing people and sending out, now you just need them confirming, right? And then just adding that, being that last gatekeeper before you decide to make a hire. And we saw that transform for lots of our clients years and years ago. It saved their HR managers and hiring managers time, and it allowed them to refocus the time on the things that really matter, right? Thinking more strategically, thinking about kind of, where are new markets we want to explore. I think that's the key is you make better decisions, get back your time, let HR professionals do the stuff that they really enjoy doing, and not a lot of the day-to-day work that kind of bogs them down. Oh, I have to send out a zillion scheduling emails. I got to go back and forth with candidates to find a good time. There are tools to help with all of this. And so I tell clients, start with the end, imagine that process, and then let's build out in piece by piece, let's build it out so that it becomes a reality.
Amazing. I mean, that explains how modern tools, AI and automation fundamentally kind of change the process of identifying, qualifying, and onboarding talent. Thank you so much for your insights. So it sounds like a complete, paradigm shift then, because let's talk about the fresh approach mentioned in our topic and what defines a truly modern and effective talent acquisition strategy for real estate, and what are its core components that set it apart from older models.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, once you've done that automation work, and I don't mean to suggest that it's easy, right? It's often a multi-month, multi-year journey. But once you've done that, you're saving time, you're making better decisions, and then you free up your talent acquisition specialists to be thinking kind of more broadly, right? Are there pools of talent that we haven't explored? I'm sure folks automatically assume, hey, if we're doing real estate, we need real estate professionals. If we're hiring for a broker, we need to find other people who have been brokers in the past. Well, there's actually evidence to suggest that you don't necessarily need to find someone that has been doing that job for years and years, that maybe you could look more broadly. You could be looking at different types of professionals in a kind of sales facing, customer facing role. I should say we added a lot of AI to title and escrow. So I spent years in the trenches kind of reinventing that process of title and escrow closing on a home. And I met some really smart folks on the front lines who were title and escrow officers, and they have very specific skill sets. I was amazed by kind of when you ask them, hey, what did you do in a previous life? It was really diverse. And it wasn't, they had been title and escrow officers for, decades and decades. Some were, and in many cases, there were generational kind of family, folks had been trained by their parents and they just, that's how they gravitated towards it. But some kind of fell into it. And so I think what's exciting is that gives your hiring managers and your talent acquisition specialists the ability to think creatively, right? And not just to be fishing in the same pool as everyone else, but to be thinking about, hey, are there, let's look at who's succeeding in this role. Are there other skills and attributes? Could we be looking in adjacent industries? Could we be looking in finance or insurance or anything like that? And so, I think that's so exciting, right? To be empowered with that sort of strategic problem solving and creative thinking.
Thank you so much for your insight. I mean, that kind of really describes what a modern, effective, talent acquisition strategist looks like. And so the next question then is, in terms of hiring top talent, is one thing, but keeping them is the real challenge. So beyond hiring, what critical strategies and systems must real estate firms implement to ensure top talent remains engaged, productive, and committed long term?
Yeah, it's a great point that just hiring the right person and putting them in that seat, that's not the entire battle, far from it. We found that there are so many other decisions you make about the workforce that influence their engagement, how long they stay, how they perform. I encourage companies, and something we did is we would study, who stayed on the job longest and where did they sit? What was their supervisor? Who did they collaborate with? And so if you have a big enough workforce, you can do that sort of research to try to reverse engineer what makes someone successful on the job. And I don't know if you know this, but any ideas? What do you think was the single biggest contributor to retention and performance? Any guesses beyond the initial hire? Yeah, I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think so.
So
I'll skip
it,
that.
it's actually their supervisor. So we've seen this in setting after setting. Who someone works for is the single biggest driver of their job satisfaction and their engagement. And so you should, especially if you're hiring for managers, thinking about using that data-driven approach to get the right people in those roles, and then even optimizing the fit. Someone might be a so-so employee for one manager, but a really good one for another. So there's a lot of opportunity to do that. I think beyond that, you should be measuring their engagement constantly. Of course, you're looking at their performance stats, but You know, engagement surveys are pretty well-worn territory. I encourage companies don't do it annually. Those hour-long engagement assessments or however long, 30 minutes at the end of the year, you're not getting information in as granular or specific kind of set that you need to make decisions. So there are a lot of companies that'll do pulse surveys, right? 3 to 5 questions once a quarter, once a month, just to measure their pulse and to understand, well, how are they in this job? Are there any issues or anything like that? Offering up, there's a ton of like Slack bots that allow employees to submit feedback and questions anonymously. So the nice thing is you don't have to go to your boss and say, hey, I'm not happy with XYZ. You can send it to a Slack bot. All of that gets anonymized and sent to the folks that, kind of running the show. And so you want to be measuring this constantly. You want to be optimizing it constantly. You shouldn't think, hey, the job is done once we used data and AI to get the right person in the right seat. It's so key for retention and long-term performance if you're just continually measuring and taking action.
Thank you. Thank you for your insights. I mean, that kind of reinforces the strategies and systems for talent retention, engagement, and then the long-term commitment. So the next question then is that for a real estate business owner listening to us right now who want to overhaul their staffing process, what is the most crucial first step and what significant internal resistance should they prepare for?
Yeah. I mean, this is the question I get most often from clients or if I give talks around the world about AI and folks pull me aside and they're like, where do I begin? Right. So I think the broad answer, and again, this is actually outlined in a lot of detail in the book, is do an AI census. So sit down with employees, have them account for how are they spending their time right now? Are there repetitive tasks that they seem to be doing over and over again that they think AI could offload? And then you build out, just describe all these different projects, right? You maybe come up with 10 or 20 different projects to start to chip away at those pain points. And then you list them and you evaluate them based on the value they create for the organization and the time, effort, risk that, it would require, right? So, and then you put them in a 2x2 matrix and you pick off the ones that are the lowest cost, lowest time frame, but the highest value. And, you start with those. And often those will be scheduling. It'll be, potentially the kind of interviewing stuff. Like it'll be a lot of very repetitive tasks where there are off the shelf tools that can really provide a boost. And the nice thing is you don't have to build it from scratch. There are companies that say, okay, we're ready to get into this AI thing. We're going to hire data scientists and engineers. And then, no, 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 no. That's overkill. Like there are so many off the shelf tools, especially in the HR space, that can help with this. And so start with those and implement them, see the value that it's being created, right? Share it with the organization, trumpet those big wins, but you start small and you start building to something bigger and bigger. And I describe it, I kind of in the book, I talk about how think of it as like a fitness journey, right? So you don't go in the gym and you say, I'm going to get in shape one day. You don't put 300
Yeah.
pounds on the barbell and do a squat. You're going to get hurt. And you're going to probably give up because you're like, this isn't impossible. Start light. It's okay. There's no embarrassment or shame there. Start with something that you can do that is going to provide a lot of relief. Build off of those wins. You build those AI muscles over time until you can eventually start to tackle bigger projects, start to do data warehousing. There's no organization I ever engage with that says my data's in great shape, right? So you have to do that diligence to unlock more transformational value.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I think that actually provide a single most important first step and discusses potential internal, of this. Moving on to the next question. So I'll say, looking 3 to 5 years ahead, how will technology reshape the real estate workforce? And what advice do you have for firms for future-proof their teams against these challenges?
Yeah. I mean, I like to kind of imagine or envision this world where you have every step of that process as automated as possible, right? And so you're getting signals about what makes someone a good fit for the job. You're getting constant streams of data that's telling you how happy and engaged your workforce is. I worked for a company that monitored people's LinkedIn. It was public data, but a lot of it was LinkedIn. And it would identify when someone had updated their profile in LinkedIn. And we found that it was actually a very strong signal of whether they were starting to look for another job. And you can intervene at that point and pull them in. So the point is, imagine all these different applications that are constantly measuring and taking the pulse of applicants or employees. You now have freed up your HR managers and professionals to be thinking strategically about, hey, what makes someone a good culture fit? What are the markets that are untapped where we could be looking for, additional applicants? And then meanwhile, you have a happier, more engaged workforce. We know from the research, they're going to stay longer. They're going to perform better. That is a huge source of competitive advantage, right? And we all know this. If you run a business, getting the right people in the job is such a key thing, and it's often overlooked. I think HR is seen as a cost center. I mean, I know this from years of research. They're seen as a cost center, and it's like, hey, this is something we have to have, but imagine a world where it's a revenue driver, right? Where people see, hey, this is a strategic partner in our business. This is a part of the organization that's going to drive value, that's going to drive revenues. It gets you a seat at the table, right? It allows you to kind of be up there with the CFO and say, hey, this is our talent strategy that's going to, allow us to kind of, step past our competitors. So, I think that's the vision is let's shift away from thinking about putting butts in seats, and let's think about, hey, how can we be a driver of value for the business, because we're hiring the best, because our competitors, they haven't even really opened up this opportunity when it comes to AI and technology.
Thank you so much for your insights on this topic. So, Michael, this has been an incredibly insightful and forward-thinking discussion. And so, your expertise on rethinking staffing, and a fresh approach to talent acquisition in real estate has been really very, very useful and invaluable. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Do you have anything at all that you would like to just, give out there to our viewers, our listeners? Is there any last word from yourself?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully I got everyone jazzed up about AI. So I'm obviously very excited. I've been doing this for 15 years. If you're interested in learning more, you can find me online. My website is michaelhousman.com. And I would say my book will be available for pre-order. The ebook will be available February 1st. The hardcover is going to be available March 1st. It's future-proof, transform your business with AI or get left behind. Yeah, it really unpacks, I was able to touch on some of these topics, but if you really want to dive in and unpack this in a meaningful way, go buy a copy. I'm incredibly happy with how it's turned out. And I think it's going to really help people drive competitive advantage and really see a lot of value. So I appreciate you for inviting me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And for more insight, just like as you've heard, please by all means get your copy of the book. And also, if you like to know more and have more insights on business growth and leveraging AI to scale your operations, please by all means reach out to us at Smart Insight Podcast. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been amazing having you on today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for having me.
Cheers.